It's the ship that made the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs.
I thought part 4 would be the last part, but then I realized what a big process it's going to be to put the stickers on, the decals. So, congratulations, we're getting a part 5 after this, which will be finishing touches and a nice surprise. But for part 4, let's focus on the stickers, because this is a big deal. It's not going to be a simple process if you have missing vintage decals. I only have 5 vintage missing decals, and the way I figured this out was I downloaded a graphic of the vintage decal set from the internet, and then I took my vintage decals and laid them out onto this black and white printout. And what you'll see here is that you can quickly assess which stickers you have and which stickers you're missing. Now, in this case, the cockpit stickers are still in the ship, so they're not missing, as is the canopy and the game table. However, I did find that I'm missing 5 hull stickers. 3 that are very small, and 2 slightly larger ones that I don't know what happened to them. So this is a good way to quickly inventory your vintage stickers and figure out what you want to do. After that, you have to then take a scan, a high resolution scan, of the sticker sheet and print it out onto sticker paper. I found this to be really strange because Star Wars has such copious resources for vintage collecting, and they also have a wide number of reproduction accessories. Now, I'm not a fan of reproduction accessories because they tend to devalue and frankly fraud people, because there's a lot of sellers out there who either know or don't know that the accessory that they're selling is reproduction. So when you end up paying a premium on something that is repro, you're actually giving money to something that isn't real. And I don't think that's right. So in that sense, I truly believe that the Star Wars fan base for vintage collecting has its heart in the right place by trying to dissuade people from using reproductions. However, in the case of decals, I find this to be kind of a gray area, because while my Millennium Falcon has the majority of its stickers still intact, there are a few here and there that have flaked off over time, and I'd like to have them all represented in some way. In the case of Transformers and G.I. Joe fan bases, they have professionally done decal sets to reproduce those on the transparencies for the G.I. Joes and for the foil for the Transformers, and it makes for a really nice resource to have when you need to replace some stickers that have flaked away, because who wants to have their vehicle sitting around without one of the major logos on it or one of the major decals, like the Cobra logo. But in the case of Star Wars, even though they're making reproduction weapons and now they're making reproduction figures, the reproduction decals are really a hard sell, because what you really get with Star Wars repro decals is the sheets reproduced on paper, but they're not die cut. You can't just peel them off and stick them. You're going to have to use an X-Acto knife to get them off. So in terms of Star Wars decals, I would highly recommend that you use as many vintage decals as you still have, because they're never going to look great reproduced. But don't ever pay for reproduction decals for Star Wars either, because you're never going to get what you need, unlike with Transformers and G.I. Joe, where I would be hard-pressed to tell you not to get repros because they're so well done. Now, as you can see here in this case, here are my vintage that I've laid out on this black and white printout. And then here is just a straight-up printout of a reproduced graphic of the decal sheet. Now, I knew there was something off about this when I printed it, and it also has to do with the base colors that were scanned in. Because I'm using my vintage decals, I had to do a little more work. And what that means is I had to take this and take into account that my decals had been both used and they've been on the ship for 30 years, and so their color is different from this. This may not be an accurate reproduction of the colors right out of the box in 1979. So what I decided to do was safely use my decals as a base, and using Photoshop, I adjusted the colors to get into the range of what my decals would look like on the ship. So in my case, I just needed 5 small decals, and I wanted them to blend with the decals that I'm going to be recycling from my original ship. This is where the internet comes in handy, because you can pull up the instructions and figure out where all those decals are going to go again. Despite being a diehard Star Wars collector, I don't memorize the locations of every single decal for every single ship. And in the case of the Millennium Falcon, this is no exception. So we're going to use this diagram off the internet to accurately put all of our decals back onto the Falcon. So now we're going to put on the final decals, the few repros that we needed, and we'll be done. It took about 2 hours and change between all the printing and all the testing and all of the different processes we had to go through, but all of the vintage stickers are back on the ship, and 5 repros are mixed in just to complete the look of the toy. The next video we will deal with finishing touches, adding the access ramp, figuring out how to get those landing gears to stand up and stay up in the back, and putting in the Jedi training remote. And like I said, we have one more surprise. So hope to see you all on part 5. Thanks.